The following research is part of the National Institute for Congestion Reduction funded by the United States Department of Transportation through the University Transportation Center program. Learn more at www.nicr.usf.edu.
Welcome to Out of My Lane, a podcast of the Center for Urban Transportation Research at the University of South Florida in Tampa. I'm Wayne Garcia, your host. We have a special episode for you as we start off season 2. I'm joined by Florida Department of Transportation Secretary Jared Perdue. Mr. Secretary, welcome to Out of My Lane.
Thank you, Wayne. Thanks for having me. Really an honor to be here. And anytime, I get to talk transportation and talk about the things that I'm passionate about and that we're passionate about in our industry, it's exciting. So thanks.
Secretary Perdue was appointed by Governor Ron DeSantis on April 7th, 2022, just in time for a robust hurricane season, of course. As Secretary, he oversees the lead agency in state government, which has the statutory responsibility to coordinate the planning and development of a safe, viable, and balanced transportation system serving all regions of the state. Secretary Perdue received his bachelor's degree in civil engineering from the Citadel, the Military College of South Carolina, and he's married to his beautiful wife, Brandis. Am I getting that right?
That's correct.
And they have 5 daughters. And I suspect that there's a podcast in there, but that's a whole nother episode. Again, thank you so much for joining us. Hey, so we start all of our guests with an icebreaker of sorts. Tell us about your daily commute. What is that like? I know you're all over the state, so there's probably no average daily commute. But when you're going from your house to your office there in Tallahassee, what's that commute like?
Wayne, thank you. This has become a rather interesting question for me now in this role because we, as part of serving in this role as secretary, there's obviously a need to be in many places throughout the week and throughout the state. We have an extremely diverse state, geographically, culturally. Our communities are diverse. And so we have a diversity of needs and a diversity of people that we're serving throughout the state. And so that really takes me to all corners, edges of the state on, I would say, a weekly, monthly basis. And so I would almost describe it like this. I don't really have a daily commute anymore. Tallahassee is certainly the capital of Florida. It's where my home office is, and our central office resides there in Tallahassee. But it's also within one of our districts. It's within the Panhandle District, which is District 3. We have 7 districts and the Turnpike Enterprise. And we're delivering major infrastructure across the state. So that takes me at all places. So, at any point in time during the week or month, there's a various number of different places that I need to be. And part of that is one of the things that I find most valuable about this role is really connecting with our communities. And in order to connect with communities and connect with people, you have to be there in person. So my daily commute is now one that is more or less unpredictable. I wouldn't say that I have a normal daily commute anymore, and I'm really enjoying that part of it so far.
Well, that's great, and I would expect nothing less. I know you talked about your heavy travel schedule previously when I saw you speak late last year. So you and the department and all the people of Florida have gone through some major tests of rapid response here, and I want to get to those hurricanes in just a bit. But let's start with your journey to this role as Secretary of the DOT. Tell us about your career and how you got into this field.
Absolutely, Wayne. So what I'll first do is I'm going to back up to just when I graduated high school. So I kind of had a twofold desire or goal when I graduated high school. One was to play college football. The other was to get an engineering degree. I was an offensive lineman in high school and a little bit undersized. So, finding a college to play football at that also offered an engineering program was difficult. And so what I ended up doing was sitting out of school for a year, training for football, and going to college part-time until I could find a place to go. I ended up working on a survey crew. Little did I know my career was going to take me into transportation, but I was on a survey crew for that year, and that was my first exposure to doing some of the work that's needed to deliver infrastructure. But ultimately ended up going to the Citadel. I walked on there. I played offensive line. I became a left tackle, actually. So I was probably one of the smallest Division I left tackles. At that time, the Citadel was Division I AA. And I was a lot bigger back then. But and so I walked on, ended up earning a scholarship, started for 3 years, and at the same time was getting my engineering degree. The interesting thing about the Citadel is you as a cadet, you have to graduate in 4 years. So not only was I playing football, I was taking 20 plus credit hours a semester. So you can imagine the busy schedule, to include the military life as well. So anyways, that was a great opportunity to build a foundation and help shape me into who I am today. But at the same time, I had a professor there that knew of the Florida Department of Transportation and was very impressed with this organization and with the industry in Florida, and actually was really fond of what we have a professional engineer training program. And from his perspective, if you're leaving college and going into a role, there's nothing better than entering into that professional engineer training program as an engineer, as a potential engineer, because it gives you exposure to all of the different aspects of the transportation industry and really helps shape where your career is going to go for the next many years. And so I ended up applying for a job as an engineer trainee, moved back home to the Panhandle. I was born in Panama City, so I'm a native. I went to college in South Carolina. So I moved back home and worked for many years in our District 3 headquarters in Chipley, Florida. For those of you who don't know, it's almost due north of Panama City, probably about an hour north, the north side of I-10. It's a very rural area, but it's a good location for the district headquarters in the Panhandle because the district spans the entire Panhandle. So I actually worked most of my career there, started as an engineer trainee, then became a geotechnical engineer working on foundations, both in design and construction. I actually did that for several years and loved that job. I absolutely loved it. But I found myself one day, and many of us do this in our career and our growth. I found myself one day reflecting on how much I did enjoy my job, but also at the same time beginning to think about what's next. And so that, that desire, that ambition that we have for a challenge and for continued growth. And so I found myself, while I love my job and I love this organization, and it's been a great experience so far, I'm ready for a new challenge. And so what's next? And so just like many of our very talented professionals, as they grow in their career, they reach that point. And that's one of the things that's kind of shaped some of my viewpoints as a manager and a leader. And so I began to look for other opportunities. I was offered an opportunity then to be interim district maintenance engineer in District 3. And I really enjoyed that role. I did it for about 9 months. Then had an opportunity to compete for and was successful with the district traffic operations engineer. So I went from geotech foundations to a stint in maintenance, and then ultimately into traffic operations, which was a whole nother field of expertise. I did that for 4 years, and tremendously thankful for the team in that traffic operations office and what they taught me and how they helped me grow. And then moved on to become the district design engineer. So I went from traffic operations to design, and ultimately moved into the director of development role in District 3, which reports directly to the district secretary. That role is responsible for work program and finance, right-of-way acquisition, design, and all of the modes. So our intermodal systems, environmental, office, and planning. So did that for roughly about 4 years, and so that's where I've served out, most of my career at DOT, and I have spent my whole career there. and it has been a truly rewarding experience. One of the things I've learned as I've advanced is serving in a various array of roles with different responsibilities and different areas of expertise has really helped diversify my view of this agency and this industry, and really how all the pieces and parts work together. So I've found it to be very valuable. The other thing that I've learned is that the success of myself, any individual, is heavily reliant on the people that you're surrounded by on a daily basis. And so I've learned to appreciate and value all of the individuals on the team that I'm surrounded by every day, because that's really truly how this organization is successful, how this industry is successful, and also me as a person. So after being a director in District 3, I moved on to be the district secretary in District 5. So I went from the Panhandle to Central Florida, and I'm here to tell you that those two regions of the state are very different.
Yes.
And so I would say that helped diversify me as a person, as a leader. The culture in our industry, the culture in DOT is very consistent across the state, but the communities that we serve are extremely diverse. And I found that moving from the Panhandle to Central Florida is different needs, different visions of where to go, different cultural backgrounds, historic backgrounds, and it changes the way that we deliver infrastructure, the way we talk about projects, and the way we serve our customers. And I've even learned that even more as a secretary, like traveling the state. That's one of the things that makes us so strong here in Florida, is truly the diversity of our communities, of our geography, and it's really something I've learned to value. So I was the District 5 secretary for nearly 3 years, I think, and our previous secretary, Kevin Tebow, is now the CEO at Orlando International Airport. Did a tremendous job while he was here. And so when he moved on, then this role became open, and extremely honored, proud, thankful that Governor DeSantis selected me for this role and appointed me to this role. Having been someone that came up through the organization and is shaped by the culture that we have in our industry, the relationships that I have and that we've built over the years, it makes me proud, and humbled to serve in this role. This team is just one that I'm extremely grateful to be on.
And I think that understanding of all of the aspects of transportation that FDOT handles, really showed in the hurricane matters that we're going to talk about in just a little bit. So when you get the nod from the governor, what do you develop as your guiding vision for the department?
So that's kind of a multifaceted question. I mean, obviously, one is the governor has a very strong vision for where the state needs to go. I mean, he's provided very clear and concise leadership. And Florida, our population is growing rapidly, and we're probably going to talk about that a little bit later. But he has a very strong vision for continuing to improve safety, relieve congestion, and bring the infrastructure to fruition that's needed to continue growing our economy, but also preserve the things that people love about Florida. And so you build a vision around that, but at the same time, we have such a tremendous culture in our industry here in Florida. Taking that culture and that team and building an environment where we can first of all recognize, appreciate, tell the story of who we are and what we do, but at the same time build on that. So take that foundation and build on it and make it stronger, better. So we do things faster, more efficiently. We get better. We bring the team closer together, and we continue to rise, to the occasion as new challenges are presented. And so really that's what develops that vision, because I'm so closely connected to our industry and our team. One of my goals is to bring people in our industry together to get aligned behind a common set of goals, common set of values, and a common vision, because that's really where our power is. It's in when people get aligned. And regardless of the things that we disagree on, we can always find something that we agree on. And that's where the real power in our industry comes from. And you saw that in emergency response. And so we're continuing to grow that vision. We're adapting, and as new members come onto our team, we're continuing to grow and adapt and build that vision and really catapult us to new heights based on the culture that we already have.
So you mentioned emergency response, and so let's just get right to the horrible storm that was Ian. Set us up for take us back to last fall, and help walk us through first off, what happened, how the department prepared, and then the response that was very much in the public eye. It was in media all over the country and the world.
Yeah, sure, Wayne. So, and thank you for allowing me to tell this story, because I do love telling the story, because I'm proud to be a Floridian. I'm proud to be on this team and part of this industry. But at the same time, major hurricanes are devastating to our communities. They're very tragic. And with that comes loss of property, valuable things, valuable people, loss of life. And so, we're very sensitive to that. But at the same time, it's important when disaster strikes any community that we start the road to recovery very quickly. And so we at DOT play a big part of that. And so, yeah, Hurricane Ian was nearly a Category 5 hurricane. It was a major hurricane. It was very devastating for the southwest coast. And also it caused pretty devastating impacts inland with flooding because of rainfall intensity. But then also it curved around and hit the East Coast and inflicted some pretty significant damage on the East Coast. And what made that so challenging was that then it was followed by Hurricane Nicole, which the East Coast had already been kind of battered by Ian, and then Nicole comes in, and so then it wreaked havoc and created a lot of devastation on the East Coast. So we've been responding to hurricanes for years. This is just something that the state of Florida has to deal with, and so never imagined that we would be dealing with major hurricanes in my first 6 or 7 months as secretary. But at the same time, I've lived through many of them, and I've worked many of them in several different roles here at DOT. And actually, I lived through one of the most catastrophic hurricanes in our history, Hurricane Michael, when it hit the Panhandle. I still live just north of Panama City, and so that very much had a personal impact for me. And so it makes me that much more focused on the response and the recovery, because I realize just how important it is. And I want to start by saying, and I'm going to talk about how we prepare, but I do want to begin by saying that responding to emergencies under Governor DeSantis's leadership is something that has been, I would say, extremely rewarding, because he gives clear, concise direction, and he's very committed to every single Floridian, helping them recover and helping people in their time of need. And so it created an environment where all of the state agencies could come together and work as a team, even under the leadership of Kevin Guthrie, our Division of Emergency Management Director. I'm not sure that I've ever seen state agencies work so closely together, tear down the barriers that divide. You heard the governor say many times, cut through the red tape and just get aligned behind what our mission is and work together. And it was very powerful, as you saw. So here, when we're getting ready for an emergency, and I'm going to specifically speak to hurricanes, we go through a series of strategic planning, staging, and preparing people, equipment, resources for whatever may occur. This is actually a very big logistical challenge, because even as you saw Hurricane Ian, sometimes you don't know the path of the storm until like just within a day of impact. And so, we immediately begin, even a week out, we immediately begin having coordination calls across the state to prepare our statewide resources and stage people in strategic locations, make sure we have the equipment that we need in strategic locations, getting ready to facilitate evacuations, because that's one of the biggest efforts leading up to the impact of a storm, is making sure people can safely get out, and also moving those resources around, those people around, as the storm path shifts, so that they can be in a place where they're out of harm's way, but at the same time can be on scene, ground zero, immediately after impact. So we have a super important mission when it comes to the storm response. I mean, transportation facilities become like your number one asset, because that's how search and rescue, first responders, and needed supplies get to and from wherever they need to go. And so we immediately deploy crews and equipment to go clear roads and assess damage. And if there's damage, then come up with a plan to quickly address it. And so in order to be able to respond to those things quickly, we have to stage those resources before the storm. And so it's a pretty significant effort. In terms of facilitating evacuation, watching that storm's path and making sure that our facilities are ready to handle the influx of traffic that comes with evacuations is extremely important. And so we go through that. We actually, in the off season, outside of storm season, we actually go through drills so that we stay warm and ready,
Yeah.
And so that helps us be prepared. And it's a statewide coordinated effort that we take very seriously.
And a complex one, because as you said, there's so many moving pieces, and you don't have to worry just about the aftermath. You got to worry about the present and all these cars streaming east, north, whichever way to get out of there. So, of course, the high profile fixes were the bridges that got destroyed in Hurricane Ian. And again, as you said, then you can't get, food relief, water, emergency care, those kind of things out to, some of those barrier islands or islands. Pine Island, I think, was one, and of course the others down there. So we're all looking, as the public, we're all looking at the damage to some of these bridges, and we're like, oh my God, these people, they're not going to be able to. That's years of rebuilding a bridge. So talk about those bridges. How'd y'all pull that off? Because it did not take years.
That's exactly right. And this is an incredible success story. And I want to start with the fact that, and this again is going to speak to how instrumental the governor's leadership was. Something that is first important to point out is that the causeways. So the two causeways that were damaged, one was going to Pine Island, the other was going to Sanibel Island. These are two very important barrier islands in Southwest Florida. Both of them, have thousands and thousands of people that live there, work there, and so there were a lot of people on those islands as the storm passed through and after the storm hit that were stranded out there. And so one of the things that's unique about this is both of those causeways and those transportation facilities going to those islands were actually not state roads; they were local roads. And so, this is where, and I really need to speak to this because it's important, is where, a lot of times in the public sector, you would spend weeks, maybe even debating about jurisdictional authority, who's going to do what, how you're going to pay
Is
for
Lee
it.
County going to do it? Is the city's going to do? Yeah.
And because of the partnerships and relationships that we have, but also because of the governor's vision for, helping the communities in need, we were able to come in and sit down with Lee County and say, hey, Lee County, do you need help? And, they adamantly, yes, we have so much to do. I mean, they were dealing with water, power, sewer, people stranded. And so they had all these operations going on. And so we sat down and talked to them like, yes, please, we could use the help. And so we immediately worked with Lee County, began to develop a plan and jump into action. No, never even question jurisdictional authority, right? This is where it's the power of people coming together. And so we were able to jump into action immediately and start developing a plan. And, resiliency is something really important. So I usually work this into the story because we've been doing resiliency for years, and resiliency for our coastal communities is really important. One of the reasons why we were able to so quickly jump into action to help Lee County with their facilities is because a lot of our state infrastructure was essentially unharmed. Because as we've rebuilt bridges and roads over the years, we've built resiliency into them. And so, what you see is there are still some vulnerable facilities, but in this case, for this storm hit in Lee County, that vulnerability was with these two causeways going to these barrier islands. And so we immediately began to develop a plan. And I'll tell you, Wayne, I can't even begin to count the number of people that were probably involved with the plan we developed. It was DOT people, it was Lee County people, FHWA was at the table the whole time. Even some people there in the community helped in various ways, and we had also resources from all over the state helping us develop what that plan was going to look like. Because immediately after a storm, one of the first things you do is have to assess the damage so that you know what it's going to take to fix it. And this was one of the challenges, because these causeways were just completely wiped out. There was just so many unknowns. And so, like, trying to develop a plan was a real challenge. And so we had a lot of help and assistance, very appreciative of that. And so we started developing a plan, and I'll start with Pine Island. So, what many people and even myself thought was going to take weeks, maybe even a few months to repair Pine Island. And you got to think about the causeway going to Pine Island. It actually was like a small island. I mean, there were businesses and homes there that got destroyed, and the land went with it, right? And so just developing a plan and the logistics of how we're going to rebuild this was very complex. And so what some thought was going to take weeks, perhaps even months, we ended up doing in just 3 days. So we entered into an emergency contract. The contractor mobilized every last resource they could get out there. But we realized that still wasn't enough. And so we actually ended up combining our own FDOT forces with the contractor. And so we were running, I think, we were moving dirt with about 60 dump trucks around the clock, 24/7, because we had to move a lot of dirt. The logistics of that were very complicated. And so we had our very own FDOT dump trucks and FDOT employees working alongside the contractor to make this happen. And so they ended up finishing that causeway in just 3 days. I mean, it was truly incredible. And what even ended up happening is the community and the people around that were watching this progress were so excited, so energized, they actually began to even offer assistance to the people who were out there working. It's truly amazing to see how people come together. And we were able to push a convoy of Publix trucks across that causeway in just 3 days. Also, we took a lot of supplies, ice and water to those communities. Incredibly grateful. And we were literally able to reunite husbands and wives, parents, children, families that were waiting to see each other, and really facilitate the movement of the goods. And really, one of the critical things that, and you see in times like this, just how truly important transportation infrastructure is getting other restoration people and equipment over to the island was just as important to get the power turned back on and the water flowing and the sewer working. So that was a big deal. So we finished that in 3 days. Then, to move on to the Sanibel Island Causeway, this one was much more complicated. There's actually several bridges on that causeway, and there's several connecting land masses. And we essentially, had to rebuild small islands. Because of the complexity of it, we actually decided to use an innovative contracting method known as a progressive design build, just because of all the unknowns. We just didn't know what all needed to be done. And so we took a new innovative contracting technique that we really haven't used a lot, and ended up preparing contract documents, advertising, and awarding in a 3-day time span. So you think about that. I mean, usually to advertise,
months,
yeah,
right?
it takes
months
months
to pull those specs together alone.
Yeah. And so, but you bring people together in a room, and I'm sure there were probably hundreds of people involved with that, from DOT employees to consultants, making sure that we were covering all the bases. But one of the things we realized as we were going through that procurement, and the successful bidder, they also submitted time, and the initial schedule for when they believed they could get the causeway repaired and back open traffic was going to be Thanksgiving. And so here we were going into, early October, and looking at Thanksgiving, and, we knew, and I knew just looking at that was not going to be fast enough, especially with the governor's expectations. I definitely didn't want to share that time frame with him. So we got the team together and like, hey, we've got to go faster. How can we figure out a way to go faster? And so everybody put their heads together. And this is something very unique because of the complexity of the project, the scope of the project, and the need for resources. We actually ended up deciding to enter into 2 contracts with 2 joint venture teams on the same project working in the same space. And so this is unheard of, but it speaks to the strength and power of the relationships in our industry. And not only that, we did not fully know what the scope of the project was going to be. So we asked these 2 teams to get in a room together and figure out how they were going to accomplish the task at hand and do it faster.
And that just sounds crazy for any kind of, regular project, right? It would be like, we don't know if this is going to happen, but these folks pulled it off.
They sure did. They got in a room, and again, I'm going to keep going back to this theme. You get people aligned behind a common mission, common goal, the sky is truly the limit. And so they got in a room, they sat down, they hammered out, they figured out how this was going to work, and they came back and said, guess what? We've got a plan. This is how we can do it, and we can finish by the end of October. And so, that was initially a very exciting moment because we were beginning to see kind of light at the end of the tunnel. And at the same time, you got to think that as search and rescue and first responders were working and they were trying to get all of these people and equipment out of the island, they were having to use air and sea, like barging. And you think about how slow that operation is because you can only move so many vehicles, so many people at one time. And so they were trying to get stuff out there as quickly as they could. But this roadway leading to Sanibel Island really became like the major focal point. And so they came together. We began to work. We set up a very unique project structure. We had our very own FDOT employees living on the project site, and we set up like an apex of sorts for decision making. Usually when you reach critical decision points on projects in major infrastructure, like you get all these other people involved, it circulates, it goes through reviews, and sometimes it can take months to make a decision. And we set up a decision-making matrix with, and Katie Sherrard was leading it. She was our project manager on site from District 1. And I'm really proud of how they kind of established this. But basically, the direction was no decision leaves the project site. And so the team would bring complex issues or critical decision points. They would huddle up in a room. They would evaluate. They would have all the expertise available to them, and then they would make a decision on the spot and keep the work moving. And this was a very innovative way to approach this because that's just not the normal way to do a business on major projects. And so it worked well. So hey, they started working. I believe at one point, I think they had 3 dredging operations trying to move dirt from the bay. And at the same time, I think we had over 80 dump trucks that were hauling dirt day in, day out, working 24/7. And as they began to work, we saw that, while the road may not be ready to open to traffic, we might have it to a place where you could actually push a convoy of power restoration vehicles, people and equipment over, which had become a really critical focus because it was just so slow getting them over there, moving just a few power trucks at a time by barge. It was just taking a lot of time. And so that became a big focus. And so the team began working and seeing they were making progress. And there was a huge moment of excitement when we realized, we might be able to push a convoy over. And so through the leadership of Division of Emergency Management, the governor, we were able to coordinate this massive convoy, hundreds of power restoration vehicles, to cross the causeway after just 7 days of construction. Incredible. Unbelievable. So you look at this project and any of the experts in our field, and even myself, looking at the damage to Sanibel Causeway, I was thinking, it could take 4 to 6 months to repair this. And our industry came together, our team came together, found a way to do it faster. But not only did they set an aggressive schedule by end of October, they were able to push this convoy of power restoration vehicles across the causeway in just 7 days. And I've even had some of the utility professionals tell me that that accelerated the power restoration by weeks. And so you think about what that means for these people that live on this island and the recovery for them, truly monumental. It was a very proud moment. And so, but we continued working. So that was a one-time convoy. Then we had to close it back down. It was not ready for traffic. I mean, they had to move slow. It was a very confined area, but we got them across. And so then we immediately went back to work. And as we continued working, we noticed that our schedule continued to advance. And it really speaks to the dedication of our contractors, our consultants, and our DOT employees, like just out there 24/7 finding ways to get it done. I mean, they were functioning on very little sleep because they truly had an important mission that they all bought into. And so we ended up finishing the Sanibel Island Causeway repairs in just 15 days. So think about that. We were looking at it initially saying, wow, this could take 4 to 6 months, and we finished in just 15 days. Truly remarkable.
So is there a lesson in this amazing case study for the rest of state government, for other states to look at? What do you take away from this that you're going, hey, we need to do this all the time?
Yeah, that's actually a great question. And emergencies are unique because, what ends up happening is in order to respond to that emergency, you draw from and pull resources from all over the state. And so it's one of those situations where everybody makes themselves available, every individual, every resource, every piece of equipment, regardless of what the need is, everybody makes themselves available to meet whatever the need is. And so, this is unique about emergencies because you can't do business like that every day because you've got to keep those resources allocated across the entire state to move things forward. But at the same time, there are a lot of lessons learned. And the biggest, and I'm going to go back to this thing because one of the biggest takeaways for me is in everyday life, we find things that, sometimes we're passionate about, that we believe, we have opinions, and a lot of times we find ourselves working through challenging issues, and we are confronted with a lot of things that we may have disagreements on as people, right? And this is just normal in the course of everyday business. But one of the things that I think we can certainly learn from is the power and the potential that lies within people and individuals aligning themselves behind a common set of goals, common set of values. And so even if you and I come together and there's things we disagree on, why don't we take time to figure out what are those things we agree on? Let's get aligned behind those things. And then let's put the power, the horsepower, the momentum of our own efforts and our own energy into those things. That's when you truly accomplish new heights. And I think that's what helped conceive and birth all of the innovative processes and things that helped us speed these projects up. Now, on a project level basis, there's a lot of opportunities there. And as I mentioned, Governor DeSantis he was very clear on cutting through the red tape, finding those efficiencies and ways to be better. And so we did that. And there's a lot of takeaways from that, cutting out some of the unnecessary back and forth that adds so much time to decision making, help because we still built a quality product. It's going to be quality for many years to come. That same team is right now planning what the ultimate permanent repairs are going to be like. And the temporary repairs are such high quality, it's like a good base and a good foundation they're just going to be able to build on. And so, we cut out all the back and forth and all the time it takes for all these review processes, made all the decisions on site, and still built a quality product. And so, there's a lot of potential lessons in there, but really it's more on for me, more on the behavior, human side of it is, you get people in a room, you get aligned behind, something you can all agree on, and it is truly powerful.
That is great. We're going to wrap up here, and I'm just going to ask you, what can Floridians look to from the Florida Department of Transportation? Do you have a top priority or something that's going to be a theme in 2023 for them?
We sure do, Wayne. One of the things that I'll mention is we've developed sort of a compass. We've been doing infrastructure for years, but at the same time, it's important that our infrastructure connects with those things that are very important to our communities. And so, and I'm going to go through those, and this is something I've learned just listening around the state. Resiliency is a very big priority. Safety, big priority. Technology, and where we're headed with technology, this is something very important to our communities. Workforce development actually has become a really big focus in communities, and the jobs that we facilitate, that we create in our industry, are a big part of that. So workforce development is a big focus of ours. But at the center of that is really and truly Florida communities. And so we view communities as the center of kind of our compass, and these are the things that our infrastructure is really going to be focusing in on. And I'm very passionate about these things personally, especially safety. I have a 16-year-old daughter that drives, and so transportation safety is a passion of mine. But at the same time, our infrastructure has a direct connection to all of these priorities that our communities have. And our communities in Florida truly are diverse. And so we want to make sure that the infrastructure we deliver aligns with the goals, the vision, the character of the communities that we're serving, because that's one of the things that makes Florida so great. The biggest challenge we have right now with that infrastructure is that Florida in many areas is growing exponentially. We're seeing 30% annual population growth in many areas. This far exceeds the growth that is used to plan infrastructure. Most infrastructure is planned on a 3% growth rate, and that's considered high. So you're seeing many parts of Florida grow at 30%. And so it's going to be really important that we continue to embrace these things that are important to our communities while we meet the challenge of delivering infrastructure that's needed based on how fast we're growing. So it's an exciting time, and I think we got a lot of big things we're going to be accomplishing.
Well, I really appreciate you coming on Out of My Lane podcast, because I think not only the transportation folks who listen to this podcast, but even the public really benefits from hearing your story and where we're all going. Secretary Jared Perdue of the Florida Department of Transportation, thank you for joining us.
Thank you, Wayne. I really enjoyed it.
All right, everybody, and we will see you season 2 of Out of My Lane. I'm Wayne Garcia, your host. Have a great day.
The National Institute for Congestion Reduction, NICR, is a transportation research center focused on innovative congestion strategies. The center is composed of researchers from the University of South Florida, the University of California, Berkeley, Texas A&M University, and the University of Puerto Rico at Mayagüez, and funded by the United States Department of Transportation. For more information, please visit www.nicr.usf.edu.